I'd like to introduce Marzia, or let her introduce herself ideally. So you can take the virtual stage. Marzia, welcome.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much. I'm super honored to be here, actually, and a little bit nervous because every time we speak to students and a new generation, we have this responsibility to, convince them to come in this transition with us. And I think I'm really honored to try and do that with all of you today. So if I'm allowed to share the screen now. Thank you so much, Angela. So hello, everybody. I'm Marzia Franchi. I'm based in Barcelona in Spain, and I'm from Cotton Diaries, which is a global community of people that are passionate about cotton, from farmers to seed breeders to researchers and agronomists who are committed to actually transform the way that we grow, make, source, use, and actually also talk about cotton. And, since we are going to talk a lot about cotton today, before we start, I want everybody here. I know I see around 130 people here. I want to invite you to take a cotton garment that maybe the one that you're wearing or one next to you. Take a minute to see what you have around you, or maybe just like picture it in your head. And while you do that, I'll show you the garment that I chose, which is this jacket that I'm wearing. It's a menswear jacket. I absolutely love it. It's 100% cotton. I wear it so often, and I take it with me pretty much everywhere. Well, I hope that everybody had the chance to take or picture a cotton garment. And so behind these very garment that we are wearing or we're picturing or we have next to us, it's a plant, which sometimes we forget. And it's a cotton plant that grows in soil. It grows once a year. And it's a fruit that produces what we call the fiber, the lint. And generally this fiber, I actually have a little bit of cotton here with me. It's generally quite soft. It's quite strong and normally quite comfortable. And it represents the most used natural fiber in our textile sector. But maybe not all of you know that cotton is not just a fiber. And it's also actually only 35% of the cotton plant is actually used for textiles. And the rest is used for producing feed for animals. It's used to make edible oils, and that goes in a lot of food like margarine, or it's used to make dollar bills. It's used to make compost, packaging. And if it's managed well, it produces almost no waste, only 3% we calculate. And let me tell you something more about this plant. So cotton is grown in around 75 countries around the world. The cultivation of cotton involves 22 million, and probably this is an estimate, and probably more million farmers around these 75 countries, and it provides livelihoods for about 100 million. And that's a lot, right? Think about how many people. But behind this plant that is grown by million and introduced in many consumers' products like our clothes, this plant exists behind a system that it's called a commodity system. And what is that? Maybe many of you are familiar with that. And a commodity basically means that its price, it's typically determined as a function of the market as a whole. And the market treats the commodity goods normally as equivalent or nearly so, with no regard to who produced them. And I want to repeat that so that it gets clear, with no regard to who produced them. And I would add actually no regard to who produced them and how. So there's no differential between a sustainable or non-sustainable cotton. And so all of you that are tuning here, all the 145 people now, I want to ask you, how would you feel if you put all your energy to produce a product, and that product that you're probably wearing or you've worked on was treated with no regard to your work? Maybe that happened to a certain extent already. Maybe you worked on a brand and you felt like people had no regard to your work, but the story and the value of a finished product normally is probably told on the e-commerce site or by the media. And that story is actually not even half of what we can tell. We could tell, actually. And today I want to talk to you about why and how we should get the full story. And you know, that's the reason why I'm here today. And in the next 10 minutes, I want to bring you on a journey to just understand better why it is so important to know who made the cotton in our garments, where and how. And I want to start with a story that actually changed the way I see things. And I want to tell you how I ended up in this cotton field on the screen, and how I met this guy called Dozy Jr. in New Mexico. He's a young farmer who's taking over his dad's legacy and grows organic cotton with a low input approach. So once upon a time, I want to start from the beginning. Back in 2016, I was lucky enough to work for an apparel company in the UK that was just starting to build their sustainable raw material strategy, how they call it. And at the beginning of our journey, the brand decided to start from cotton. And why? Because it was the most used material in our products. And it represented a vast number of environmental and social challenges. And as well, of course, with this challenge came reputational risk, potential reputational risk that was present in our supply chain. And in fact, some of the main environmental issues, which many of you are familiar with, probably from reading or just listening to a lot of conferences, you know, cotton has problems with the overuse, especially in water scarce area of water. So irresponsible cotton production can drain water aquifers, and it can limit the water access for people and nature. It can. And then it's also associated with the overuse and misuse of pesticides, which has significant impacts on ecosystem as well as the health of farmers and their communities. And same goes with the fertilizers, the misuse and overuse. And that can cause soil fertility problems, and soil acidification, as well as water quality impacts. And then with cotton, there's also a relation of socioeconomic problems, such as poor working conditions, child labor, forced labor. You may have seen the recent news, and gender inequality, which holds back inclusive development in cotton farming communities, and high debts, volatility of market prices that affect farmers. And so just to wrap up, this brand that I was working for decided to commit to have 100% sustainable cotton by 2020. And at the time, I was a young sustainability coordinator within a company. My manager just left when this commitment was taken. And so I had to figure out myself how to achieve this ambitious target. And like any brand does these days, I turned to certifications and standards. You can see some of them here. And I turned to some called the most familiar ones, probably you've heard of them, organic cotton, with the organic cotton standard with Textile Exchange and GOTS, and also Better Cotton Initiative. And in the beginning, I cannot tell you how hard it was to figure out this transition. it was, I worked so hard to get the bureaucracy of sustainable certifications right, to also develop a system in place for the teams to be involved, for the warehouse to segregate materials. I mean, I won't go into the details of how hard it was, but only after a few months, actually, I felt like we kind of succeeded as a company. In fact, we achieved 50% sustainable cotton, and we were really thinking that we were changing the way that the system was working before. And so proud of that achievement, we published a communication of our commitment. And a few weeks after, a tweet came through from one of our customers, and it said, "Where do you source your cotton from?" And I was like, oh my God, I achieved just this goal, just like, give me some breathing time. What a silly and very specific question to ask. And, you know, I was 26 by then. And after a little bit of thinking, I realized that this is a very important question. And I asked myself, like, can we really answer it? And if not, how could I guarantee that I'm really delivering on sustainability and I'm changing things on the ground? So I turned to my paperwork, my certification, my systems that I put in place. And it was overwhelming. I realized that it was really complicated at the time. And with a few resources that we had, I was alone in my sustainability team, and the infrastructure that existed didn't allow me really to figure it out. And after months of research, of calling, etc., I realized that the problem was that we were so detached as a brand, as designers, as CSR experts within a brand from the rest of the supply chain, especially from the farm. And so I had no choice, but I took some time off work and I wanted to find out myself. So I ended up here, which I swear it's not a psychiatric hospital. It was just next to this cotton field in California. I spent 3 months following the cotton harvest in the US, from California to New Mexico to Texas, North Carolina. And what I did, I farmed whilst I interviewed a number of cotton farmers, researchers, actually not only in the US, but also in Africa and Turkey after these 3 months, that were growing all sorts of cotton, or were working on all sorts of cotton, from conventional to organic certified to Better Cotton Initiative. And the reason why I did this is because I wanted to experience what it meant for them, from them working on the ground, what sustainability meant from their perspective. And here is where we go back to Dozy Jr. At the beginning. So, and I asked myself throughout this journey, how could I ensure that my decision within a brand would keep supporting his work and all these other people work to advance sustainability on the ground from the farm up? Was a certification enough? And here I want to call all the creative minds, I know there's so many here, to really step up and imagine, like, what if we could truly know where, how, by whom our cotton products were made? And what if we could establish a trustworthy and mutually supportive relationship with the people, the researchers, the farmers along our supply chain? And this is like a question that I keep going back to, because in the end, what I want to do with Cotton Diaries and all the work that I do also with Transformers Foundation, I want to support real people making the right story happen. And so instead of contributing to a responsible chemically intensive farming system based on monocrop agriculture, we could maybe support the work and tell the story of, for instance, Abiba here. Abiba Nama is a lead farmer in the Tari village in Burkina Faso in West Africa that works along so many other female farmers to switch to organic cotton. And this transition is helping stabilizing her income for herself as well as her family. And with that, she's able to send her kids to school. So, instead of contributing to soil degradation, what if we could establish a direct relationship that could support the work and tell the story of this guy here, Nishant, the head of Oshadi Collective, who works with this local community in Tamil Nadu in India is setting up a seed to soil supply chain, and is supporting regenerative farming, which focuses on soil health as well as the health of his community. And what if, instead of contributing to deforestation and the loss of our world's lungs, through our product, we could open a window to support the work and tell the story of Val here. She's an agronomist in Brazil who supports the upskilling of many, many farmers that work with the brand Veja. And so, what if we break these invisible chains of wherever our cotton comes from, and we redirect our efforts and support the work of all these people that have a role behind the garment that we see here. And so I want to wrap up here because I know I'm probably short on time, and I want to see if you have questions. So, this is not easy, and it requires a lot of work, but these are some tips that I want to share with you. And since you're the next generation, there's a lot of students here, and you're planning to enter this industry, I want to invite you to keep curious and keep your mind open, keep asking questions. When you work on a cotton garment, you touch a cotton garment, don't forget that there's a farmer behind it. There's an ecosystem behind it. And then another thing that for me is super important, let's focus on establishing relationship with our supply chain over transactions. So the sustainability transition cannot happen or be reduced to a transaction of a paper certificate or a digital certificate or a token, whatever. It needs a collaborative effort, and that needs nurturing. And another thing that is for me the most important, especially for you, and I hope you keep this advice in mind, that you need to keep challenging the system as is. And because you have this new energy, I think you are the generation that can change the way that things are done and make it better in a sense. So with that, I will open the question, and I hope we have interesting questions, and I'll just stop sharing the screen now.
So that was great. Thank you very much, Marcia. That was really interesting. I see some questions already in the Q&A, so we'll start off if we can. So the first question I have from Maranisha is, you touch on soil regeneration and soil health. What methods can the industry adapt right now to achieve this?
Yeah, wow, what a big question. I'm super happy that people are interested in soil, because soil, as it's one of our critical hotspot that we need to work on. The thing is that I don't think there is a standardized method for. I touched on it on the beginning. There's 75 countries that grow cotton, and soil health and practices may look different from one region to the other, from one reality to the other. So I think what I don't know, Maranisha, what your role is within the brand, but within the industry. But it's I think it's pushing this topic at the top of the agenda, and keep talking about it and not forgetting. I think it really depends on it's reality specific. So, but yeah, it's very hard to answer.
So Meronish is appearing with us tomorrow, so she's a specialist in this area, so you can probably guess from the question. It's a hard-hitting one on that front.
Get in touch with me and
yeah,
let's
so you guys can hook up, I think, and have a talk about that. But very good. So we need to keep it top of the agenda and keep talking about it. There's another question. The price of cotton is increasing. How do you think the consumer will react to having to pay for this increase? Like many other things.
I mean, I'm not sure if the consumer is yet paying for the increase, and I don't. Yeah, I mean, the issue of cotton prices in this commodity system is that it's not, there is never like, you never know about the real cost of what it costs to produce cotton. Farmers complain about it. It's a highly subsidized crop, like any agricultural crop, and the prices of everything is going up. I think it is a complex issue, the one of pricings, but we've never probably paid the real price of cotton. So maybe we should start asking a different question. What does the farmer need to actually achieve sustainability practices on the ground? And like, are we too spoiled to pay low prices? And I don't think it's a consumer, it's maybe like more on the brand or the suppliers, like the supply chain need, I think, to step in and understand what is the real price of sustainability as well as crops.
Yeah, that's an interesting one as well. And then there's another question here, and I think then we'll round up. Maybe Marzia, afterwards you can answer some of the questions in the chat as well and type them in, just so we're on time. But last one, so what Moshin Sayed said, that what was the percentage of cotton farming that currently uses regenerative agriculture?
I don't think there's any study that confirms that, and also there is not a one common baseline definition of a regenerative agriculture yet, so I don't think that can be determined. But
so interesting question, but still to be determined.
Yeah, and if we had more closer relationship, maybe we would know more. Yeah.
Well, I think we've had great food for thought about considering, you know, the social story behind what we're buying and purchasing in general, and then especially with the cotton as well. I remember Lee Adelcourt always saying, if your sandwich is more expensive than your cotton t-shirt, there's something going wrong. Someone's paying for down the line. So I think that's a nice foundation as well for your story, which are beautiful stories as well, giving us some insight to your journey. Thank you very much for that.
Angela, can I just have a call to action? Just the last.
Yes, of course. Go. Yes, absolutely.
I think I made this presentation also to make the new generation, or like people within our industry that are have been here for a long time, to realize that there is a connection between farming and fashion, and that connection is influencing the way that our ecosystem is degraded or actually enhanced. And I think we need to nurture it, and don't forget that as fashion designer, you're part of this system. So yeah, anyway,
absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. It was a privilege. Okay, thank you very much, Marzia. So I hope you all enjoyed that. Marzia, I think, had a great story and a great call to action at the end. So please let us stay conscious of what we're doing and our thinking behind the farming.